In 2007, I was asked to do a book about child protection services in the Department of Family and Children's Services in Georgia. At the time, my wife had passed away, and I wasn't capable of doing the kind of research and the dedication to the work that needed to be done. However, in 2012, the situation came back to me again, and my capacities restored. I wrote a book called Child Protection Abduction Services, the Modern Mafia. There's a lot of things people need to know about child protection services on the Department of Family and Children's Services. First thing is that the names are not accurate. They're actually misnomers or oxymorons. The way that the system is set up, they don't serve the well-being of children or families. They actually are financially backed by the federal government to serve their own purposes, which is to make money. They have created an infrastructure that is amazingly immense, huge on a scale that you've never seen. And oftentimes the judges and the attorneys and the workers inside the Child Protection Services offices are also on the boards of directors or financially rewarded by the agencies that they refer their clients to from the federally funded agency. This in and of itself is defrauding the federal government. Even worse, they're using children from all over the United States to do this. For a long time, I didn't believe what I was being told. Couldn't imagine that a federally funded agency could behave in the way that they do. And it took very little research for me to find out that this was completely and pathetically accurate. Child Protection Services and DFCS, depends on what state you're in, what acronym they use, basically comes in and takes children. And their only financial incentive is either to get a supervised guardianship or an adoption, which means they have no incentive whatsoever for restoring a family. No incentive whatsoever. This was changed by Bill Clinton when he was president, and he actually increased the funding for adoption. Immediately thereafter, the numbers of adoptions in every county, in every state, under the auspices of Child Protection Services and Department of Family and Children's Services, increased exponentially over the next decade. By the time I was approaching 2007, it had become a pandemic of kidnapping, coercion, fraud, perjury, even to the point where the family court system that Child Protection Services and the Department of Family and Children's Services operate through were forced to give themselves immunity. The attorneys, the Child Protection Service workers, and the judges have immunity from perjury, slander, fraud. Only court in the country that can do this. Even worse, if you are accused by one of these agencies, you have no recourse. They have a closed-door hearing. You're not allowed to see the witnesses against you. As a matter of fact, most of the time it says anonymous. You're not allowed to testify in your own behalf. You're not allowed to hear the testimony against you. You get a piece of paper and you have 30 days to respond. The problem that we have is that most of the time the paper isn't received by the parents of the persons in question until after the 30 days are up. And it's the norm, not the exception. So what happens if your child is taken by Child Protection Services or Department of Family and Children's Services is that you've had your child kidnapped. They've not issued a warrant in most cases, which is a requirement of the law, and they use law enforcement to enforce their will. It'd be nice to be able to blame law enforcement and the judges. The problem that you have is that it's ignorance. Law enforcement agencies do not realize that Child Protection Services are required under the law to have a warrant to come take your children. This is just the beginning of the problem. The financial incentives are hundreds of thousands of dollars for every child. In many states, they have children who have been medicated into submission because a medicated child or a special needs child nets Child Protection Services thousands of dollars more every month. You know, you have foster care systems, which, again, you shouldn't blame the foster parents, because the foster parents get paid somewhere between $300 and $800 a month for every child that they take in, while the Child Protection Services agency nets somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000. To me, this doesn't seem right. And to most people who've done research, this doesn't seem right, because why is it that the person taking care of the child only gets 25 to 30% of the money that the federal government is allotting for the care of that child? Even better, as far as questions go, is what is being done with the other 2/3? And why is it that they need that much money anyway? So that kind of opens the conversation. It brings a few of the questions to bear. And I'm going to try to answer a few other questions that have been asked of me as completely and thoroughly as I can. It's not an easy subject to cover. It's not something that can be covered in a very short period of time. But with that as a foundation, we'll carry forward into the next segment, and hopefully I can answer some more questions about how these agencies function and the reason why we need to change the way that they work.